tell us a little more about yourself, right? What's your background? What are you doing now? What have you done in the past?
Okay. So I'm Suryansh, and I did my bachelor's in engineering from NIT Jalandhar, and so that was in civil engineering. I was always interested in capital markets and how it works, in investing, in being an analyst, and that sort of stuff. So I enrolled for CFA Level 1 curriculum, which is Chartered Financial Analyst Level 1 exam, while I was a full-time student in NIT Jalandhar.
Oh, while you were an engineering student, you basically started to go into the CFA stuff.
Yeah, and probably the reason is that the Indian system is such that it doesn't give you a flexibility to move into different streams.
Right.
So I enrolled into engineering, but really in the second year or third year of my bachelor's program, I was pretty sure that this is not what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that happened to me, so I can completely understand. From the get go, I realized that I was a shitty engineer, so I'm not gonna be able to make it. So I might try something else.
So this is where it really started when I enrolled for CFA Level 1. And you know how the Indian society works is that I'll just tell you a very interesting story.
Yeah.
So I was compelled by my family to prepare for CAT, and I didn't really prepare for CAT, but somehow I got a fine percentile, and I got admitted to some of the lower ranked IIMs in after completing my bachelor's.
Right. So let me pause you there, Suryansh. So let's first, for the students who are not familiar with the Indian education system, let's tell them what the IIMs stand for, right? So before you go forward.
IIMs are Indian Institutes of Management, Indian Institute of Management, which is probably the most premier management institute in India.
Right.
And so I got an admit into IIM. I was pretty sure that I don't want to go there because I didn't prepare for CAT. I was predominantly preparing for GRE for the universities in US and Canada. And but you know how the Indian society works is that if you get an admit into IIM, you have to go there because it's an IIM or an IIT, and that's
for sure.
That's the society thing. And after spending around 2 months, probably 1.5 months or so in a management school, I realized that this is not what I want to do. I mean, this is not the university where I want to complete my master's.
Right.
After around 6 weeks in an IIM, I dropped out of that IIM. I started a full-time job, and then I started reapplying to universities in the US.
Right.
And fortunately, I got an admit from Washington University in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And the name of the program that I studied is Masters in Engineering Management.
Got it.
So I would also like to give a brief intro of what engineering management is, because the name itself is a bit confusing. It has both engineering and management.
For sure, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So really, engineering management is an MBA program for engineers. So 70% of what we study is pure management. It's pure MBA, but it's more from an engineer's perspective. You have those engineering skills. You have a great analytical background and problem-solving skills. On top of that, in order to be successful in today's environment, you need those managerial skills. And that is what this program really does, is that it focuses a lot on management, and it also gives you the flexibility to have 30% of your courses in things like cybersecurity or data analytics, or let's say entrepreneurship or anything that you want.
Right.
So that you can build up on that strong analytical background of yours, and at the same time harness your managerial skills and so on. So after completing my master's in engineering management, I'm currently working at Morningstar. So Morningstar is an investment management and investment research company here in Chicago. And so my program is a rotational program. And the way rotational program works is that for the next 2 years, I rotate in different positions. So from marketing to data analysis to, let's say, investment research to investment management, they give you a lot of flexibility in what you want to do. So so that's what I'm currently doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So thanks a lot for the background, Suryansh. I think that's very helpful for us to at least understand where the
Yep.
where the groundwork started to happen. So I have a few questions, right, that I want to ask. But let's start with the with the time when you were still in your undergrad,
Yep.
right, doing civil engineering, and realize that that wasn't something that you wanted to pursue as a life career, right?
Uh,
Uh, so you started the CFA certification thing, and then you also started to prepare for CAT. You also started to prepare for GRE. Wow.
yeah, it was a mess.
I know. I mean, I have to say that you're probably the first person I've seen who actually just spread yourself so thin, but still came out of it very successful. So congratulations on that. But so tell us a little more, right? Since this is the more progressive journey that you are in now, what really inspired you to look at the U.S. When you were in college?
For me, it's really all about the experience. I think in today's environment, if you want to learn something, you can learn anything on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to be in a university where I can interact with people, I can interact with professors, I can meet probably the most intelligent of the researchers.
Right.
And for me, it was really all about the experience.
Okay.
Because if you want to learn something, you can learn in India, you can learn using the internet. And that's so having done a master's program here in the US, I think the one thing that you really appreciate is the culture,
Mm-hmm.
is that you get to meet people from all around the world, and you just have a very different outlook. I mean, I've had professors who. So, I mean, I'll just give you an example. So, one of my professor was an executive in Motorola,
Mm-hmm.
and she's so humble and she's so nice, and you can always approach her. So, when you meet all these people, you just realize that probably there's much more to life
Right.
than all these hard skills. And
Right.
a person is much more important than any other things.
Totally, I agree.
That's probably my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, that's very true. I think I definitely agree with what you were saying, because coming to the US, at least for me as well, was an eye opener, right? And it broadens your perspective tenfold,
Yep.
right? You're thrown into this new environment and into a new culture, right? And you have to
Yep.
go about setting yourself up in this new environment, and the system set up in a way that it will help you, stand on your own feet and become successful. So
Yep.
so that's a very 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 good point. But let's talk about why US and not Canada or Australia, New Zealand, or any other countries. So why was US the focus?
So I think I would say US and other countries. So first of all, if you want to work for the biggest of the companies and the best of opportunities, you'll always find them in US.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would have good jobs in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, and all these other countries, but the best of everything is in the US.
Right.
And specifically, I would say, in terms of job profiles, you can find similar job profiles, similar work in all those other countries. But from the monetary perspective, for the same job, let's say if you'll be paid $60,000 in Canada, you'll be paid $90,000 here.
Right.
That's a very prominent difference, and so I mean that's an advantage of being in the US. A disadvantage of being in the US is that it's much more risky from a
international students point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are both upsides and downsides of being in the US. The upside of being in Canada, especially, I'm not too sure about New Zealand and Australia, but the upside of being in Canada is that you can be pretty sure about and not being thrown out of the country. I mean, you won't be thrown out of the country from the US as well, but still, I mean, the visa environment, especially with the administration currently, is quite uncertain. That's a downside. The upside is that you will have great experience here. You'll have a lot of opportunities, which I'm not pretty sure whether you'll have those sort of opportunities in those other countries. If you want to get a normal job, probably, I mean, you can get a normal job anywhere around the world. But if you want to get best of jobs, I think probably US is the place.
Got it. So taking some steps back again, right, and going back to your college time, which is more interesting for me right now because that's where all the action actually happens. So once you knew you wanted to come to the US, right? What were the first steps? What were those first steps that you had to figure out uh, to start preparing?
So Raj, let me start by saying that for me, it was very difficult to figure out the first steps as well, and that's where your organization really comes into play. Is for an Indian student who's aspiring to go to US or probably do a master's program or do a PhD program, it's difficult to sort of understand what an SOP is, what an application process is, and for me, at least in the first 6 months or so, there was nobody to guide me. And that was the reason I enrolled for CAT and then decided, okay, CAT is not for me, GRE is for me. Then probably doing CFS. There was a lot of confusion around that,
Right.
which was definitely a wrong decision. If I would have had a more clearer set of frame of mind and somebody to probably guide me in what is the right thing for me, I would probably have done better in my GRE exams and other things. So that is where your organization comes in, and the first step is really the most challenging one. Is like, do you want to do a master's in India? Do you want to do a master's in another country? If you want to do a master's in another country, which country is it? Because if you want to go to Australia, the process is totally different. If you go to US, it's totally different. What program do you want to?
Absolutely,
that's a totally different. Topic. Because in my experience, a lot of my friends and me, we were quite sure that we do not want to do civil engineering. But if we don't want to do civil engineering, then what do we want to do? That was a big question for me.
Yeah.
And that's where counselors and like all those new startups come into play and trying to help students figure out the right step.
For sure. I think you're not alone in that. In that ask for the right steps to know, because I think the way systems are set up, there's not enough information out there for you to understand if that that particular path that you're looking at suits you or not. And that's why we're building Connexio, because there's a lot of general information that you can Google, but since this is not about general information, this is about your own life, right, and your own interests. I think a personalized approach to where you should be going and where you should be heading is very important. So we've gone through that.
Absolutely.
We've gone through that ourselves, right? And that's where we feel that just knowing just general steps is not going to be helpful, right? You got to be successful if you're moving yourself from one country to another, right, and setting yourself up into a totally new environment. So yeah, I'm very glad to hear that. So,
and just to add one point, so I've used your platform, and so when you try and Google information, let's say if you want to do a master's in operations research, it's very clouded. It's you're flooded with information.
Yes.
And the best part about your platform is that it's very simple. It's very simple to understand, and you have the best counselors who would help students. I really compliment you for that.
Thank you.
And I personally used it.
Yeah. We are very happy to actually have counselors, right, in our team that are passionate to help students out.
Yeah.
We work with students every single day, and there are a lot of myths that we have to break. And I don't want to get started on that, but there's so many of them that I want to break, because the first thing that we always hear from students is I just I'm looking at US news and I only want to focus on the first 20 or 30 schools.
Yeah.
And they miss out on so many other good schools just because they're looking at US news, right?
Yeah.
And we tell them that US news, one, does not really matter for you because you're a master's student. and at that you're an international student, right?
Yep.
So that ranking really does not matter, right? What matters is a fit, right?
Yeah.
So what's your take on that now that you've actually completed that journey and you went to a pretty decent school? WashU is pretty highly ranked, right? But what's your take on this now?
So I'll tell you one thing, and I'm pretty confident that most of the people do not know this, and I didn't know this when I was in India, is that the ranking of the school doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It absolutely doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in your job search. It probably matters in terms of the quality of education and experience,
right?
But in sense of in terms of job and your future prospects,
it doesn't.
And I'm saying this because I'm working in Morningstar currently.
Yeah.
And people who are in the same profile with me, who are in the same rotational program, they come from Stanford,
right?
And they also come from a local Chicago,
right?
So there's a lot of variation, especially for international students.
Yeah.
Because for an international student, getting into a top university is much more difficult as compared to probably a US citizen.
For sure.
And what happens was that, I mean, I've spoken with some of the people back in India and trying to help them figure out colleges and stuff. Students feel that if they don't get into a top 20 college, they shouldn't come to this because they won't get jobs.
I'm so glad that you're saying this because we hear this and we pull our hair out that we're telling you that there are good schools that you're able to get to, right? And you'd have better chances of succeeding. But
and that's what I felt. I mean, that's what I felt when I was back in India.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to be honest, but yeah, that.
But that's lack of guidance, right? That's the problem that exists. That there's lack of guidance there, and I think the forums usually, and whatever you're seeing, right? Everyone wants to basically apply to the top 10 schools.
Yep.
And we get reasons from students like, oh, I want to apply to this XYZ school because they take 1,000 students, and we can surely make into their 1,000 student class. And we're like, no, that's not the number to look at. The number to look at is what their acceptance rate is. It does not matter if if they're taking 1,000 students, they might be getting 1 million applications.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'll also share one of my other experiences, which I think is very relevant, is that in India, so I've done my bachelor's in India, and I'm from India. So in India, things are very different.
Yeah.
So if you are from a top-ranked university, from an IIT, from an IIM,
right,
or from an NIT, which are top-ranked management or engineering school, it doesn't matter if you know anything or not, you're going to get a job.
Right.
Because I did civil engineering from an NIT, and I didn't know shit about civil engineering,
right,
and I did get a job in my first interview. So
totally.
I absolutely didn't know anything about
totally, and that's how it works. Yeah.
But here in the US, things are very, very different.
They are.
So it really depends on, do you have those skills or not?
Right.
So if you have two options of going into a top-notch university and doing a program which is not good for you, and probably going into a not so good university and doing a program which will add on to the skills that you already have and is a good fit for you,
right,
I would absolutely say that the second option of going to a lower ranked university into a program which is better fit for you will serve you well.
Totally.
Because that's what really matters here.
Absolutely. And that's what it is. And there's one other thing that the students don't really put into regard, which is, at the end of the day, you're still applying to that 80,000 H-1B visa pool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're from Harvard or if you're from some XYZ university, you still get the same shot at that visa. And there's no difference there, right? So again, I mean, we're not trying to, say anything wrong about the best schools. They are there because of a particular reason.
Yep.
But it should not be the end of all games for you if you don't get into the top schools. I think it's okay if you want to basically be ambitious and apply to those schools. But there are very, very good schools in the US, right? Unlike
Yeah.
other countries that you can actually get to, and those people really are driven to actually help you out and make sure that you're successful after you graduate.
And the fact is that only 5% of the students would actually make into those top 20 universities.
Totally.
95% of the applicants would go into other universities.
Yeah.
And having said that, I got rejections from, I mean, you can, from Columbia, from UNC, from UT Austin, from
Right.
UC Berkeley.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to get one acceptance from like WashU. That was great. But the ranking of the university really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's okay for domestic students, but not for international graduate students, and that's what we keep on telling them. But it's hard to put that into perspective, because culturally, you're absolutely right. Culturally, we are driven.
The ranking matters a lot,
right? Yeah, culturally, yeah, ranking matters a lot, and so that's what people go after. So I think we've beaten this topic a lot, and there I think we can actually do one whole hour of talk about why ranking doesn't matter, but we'll keep on moving on, right? So Suryansh, in retrospect, right now, when you look back at your 4 years that you actually spent towards getting where you are right now, where you're sitting and where you're working, what would you change when you first started? I think you did mention that getting a clearer picture of where you wanted to go and having that clear guidance would definitely help. But what would you change if you had to change that one thing, right? What would you change?
I think I would really prefer. I mean, the first point that you already mentioned is that if I would have had much more clarity in what I wanted to do, that would have served me well. And having said that, the other thing that I wish that I would have concentrated a bit more was really to take smart decisions while selecting the correct university for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, Washington University is a great university. The program which I did was a great program.
For sure, yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. But there's another aspect to it, which is the cost side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are talking about the top universities, they're much more expensive as compared to the universities that are not as highly ranked.
Definitely.
So I had some offers from other universities where I had a lot of scholarships, to say.
Yeah.
And I decided not to go into those universities and go into a higher ranked university. Right. And probably the program was also good. But the cost part of it is something that I wanted to touch, because coming to US and starting a program here and having that uncertainty on the top of your mind,
right,
on whether you will get a job or not, is very burdensome and tiring.
I agree.
So I mean, if you can manage your cost well, if you can manage your student loans well, if you can take a more smarter decision in selecting a university which makes sense from a financial perspective.
Yeah.
And not only university, a program. And I want to I want to emphasize on the fact that if you are a good designer, or let's say if you are a very good architect, very good architect, it's very difficult to get a job in the US.
Yeah.
Because there simply aren't enough jobs for international students which sponsors H1B.
Right.
So if you are looking to come into US, I would beg you to look into programs which have jobs.
Right.
Because I've had a lot of friends and because they're very close friends, and they're having problems with job searching.
Yeah.
And areas related to that. And the main problem is that the things that they've studied are simply not employable now.
Right.
Especially for international students.
Right.
So, I mean, there are all sort of jobs in the US, but there are limited jobs which sponsor
H1B visas,
which hire international.
Totally.
So when you take that decision of coming to the US, it's extremely important to understand what are the prospects of the area that you are going into.
Yes.
What are the employability prospects of your degree?
Right.
And does it make financial sense?
Absolutely. And I could not agree more, because you touch a point that I want to resonate with. Right. When I talk to students and tell them about the journey that we've had, and I've helped a number of students make that journey now. the biggest thing that I tell them is to, spread their risks a little more evenly. And as you said, right, don't take students loan just to get to the top school, where you have to pay out of pocket, right? Make sure you're financially independent at the end of this. And there are great universities, great programs that would cost you less, and you would not actually have to, get out on the other side, just having lost $100,000 or $150,000. Because at the end, what I've seen is for master's students, what actually gets you employability is what you've done. And it's not the number of courses or the courses that you've taken. What you've done outside the courses is basically what's employable.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's not what that a lot of students understand. There are careers that they would go into, or they would pick up careers that definitely, would not give them a good job, or are H-1B preferable jobs. So that's a different topic. But overall, I think if you're moving to a new country and you're spending out of your pocket, and you're spending a lot more than you would be spending in your own country, the best thing to do is to make sure that your risks are as low as possible. Right? Your cost of living is low, your tuition is low, right? And even if you don't get scholarships, go and pick up a university where you're not spending as much.
Sure.
Right? Because the program might just be as good as, as the XYZ school that you've heard about. And it's all about, the schools that you've actually heard about. That's it. Because most of the people I've heard about Stanford and Harvard, everyone wants to go there. Right? And I was talking to some student, and he's like, oh yeah, I want to go to UCLA. And I said, you don't have the scores for those. And he's like, no, I just want to go to UCLA. And I asked him why. And he's like, oh, because it's a great school. And then I asked him about Vanderbilt, right? Vanderbilt University.
Which is approximately the same.
Yeah, it's actually high. It's higher on the rankings. And because he had not heard of Vanderbilt, he said, no, I don't want to go there. And it's just in your head. Just in your head. You're spending less money there than UCLA, right? It's a higher ranked university. But just because you've heard of California, or somebody's mentioned the word UCLA to you, right? You just want to go there.
Yeah, I mean, coming to a different country is a very important decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I would request everybody to consider all the factors, from financial to emotional to what about the correct career perspective.
Yeah.
And always consider the worst case scenario.
Right.
And the worst case scenario is that you will spend some amount of money here, you will do a master's program, and you won't get a job. And that's what I always do. I mean, I always think about the worst case. That's fine.
Yeah.
Think about that worst case scenario, and think that if that happens, would you be able to survive or pass through that?
Totally.
And if you start considering that, you will. I think that probably it makes you much more risk averse in your decision.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, and really good advice to all the students. So let's talk about some numbers, Suryansh. So let's talk about your GRE, right? Since you were so thinly spread, and you had your hands in three different areas. So how did you fare on the GRE?
My GRE score was 325.
Right. Which is a pretty good score.
And the breakdown is 168 in quant, and 157 in verbal.
Right.
So, I mean, if there are Indian and Chinese students who are listening to this video, I can guarantee you will score very, very good in quant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every Indian student, especially who has some sort of a mathematical or quantitative background,
right?
The quant section in GRE is very, very simple.
Yes.
It's really about practice. You do not need to prepare anything. I mean, you need to just revise some concepts, definitely.
Right.
And it's very simple.
Right.
The difficult portion is the verbal section.
It is.
Because English is not something that comes naturally to us. And especially the vocabulary which is required in the verbal section.
Right.
So your GRE score really depends on how you do in the
verbal section. Yeah.
So that was my experience, and I would say that I'd spent 95% of my time in preparing for the verbal section.
Right.
Well, one section is already.
Yeah, and I think that's an absolutely right advice to give students, and that's what we do. So let me ask you this, Suryansh, that what year did you start preparing for your GRE?
So in my case, it's a bit like clouded and muddy.
Right. Yeah.
So I started preparing for CAT.
Right.
And after preparing for 3 or 4 months, I stopped preparing for CAT.
Yeah.
And then I started preparing for GRE, and both CAT and GRE have very similar topics.
Right.
So especially when you talk about the quant section, it's almost similar.
Right.
The verbal section, 50% of it is similar. The other 50% is much more vocabulary heavy.
Right.
So it's different in that aspect. But other than that, it took me around 2 complete months when I was in my bachelor's to prepare for GRE.
Right. So was this the senior year, the 4th year of college?
Yeah. So this was a senior year.
Got it. So now, if you look back, Suryansh, and if you had known that US was your ultimate destination, when do you think you'd start preparing for it?
I think I would start preparing for it as early as possible.
As early as possible, right?
So for a GRE exam, the GRE exam lasts for 5
years.
So the validity of the score is for the next 5 years.
Right.
So even when you are in the second year or in the sophomore year of your bachelor's, even at that time, if you give your GRE exam, it would be valid when you
definitely
graduate from your bachelor's
program. Right.
So especially for GRE, I think I spent a considerable amount of time in learning the vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only, and I believe that's the only thing that needs a lot of preparation or needs a lot of time.
Definitely.
That you have to learn the vocabulary.
Right.
So if you can start that process early, and so GRE vocabulary is very different from the vocabulary in other exams.
Yeah.
So there's a set of 1,000-1,500 words that you just have to learn.
Yeah.
And if you have a good vocabulary, generally in English, that would help you.
Right.
But the GRE vocabulary is different than CAT vocabulary or any other exam that you give.
Yeah.
So it's a specific set of 1,000-1,500 words that you have to learn. If you can learn it earlier, probably in the second year, third year, fourth year of your bachelor's program, if you are completely sure that you want to go abroad, I would highly recommend you to write your GRE exam as soon as possible, because that gives you the flexibility and time to prepare for your applications. You don't have to worry about your GRE and
Totally.
Because you already have those scores, so you can concentrate on your LORs, your SOPs,
right,
and entire applications.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, Suryansh. I think that's what we try and tell our students, right? If they are in sophomore year, which is the second year of college, we usually tell them to start preparing for the GRE then, right? So by the third year, they should have already taken their GRE by the end of third year, so that starting fourth year, right, the junior year in the 7th semester, they can start looking to, start their application. Because that's going to take a considerable amount of time. The statement of purpose, the letter of recommendations, who to ask for those letters, and all that stuff. All that takes a lot of time too. So I'm glad that you basically resonate with the same ideas that we have, and we are trying to tell students about. So that's awesome. Now I also want to talk a little about, and I know we just have a few more minutes left, but a little about your aspirations to move into finance, and where did that start? Because I'm guessing a lot of people are going to be interested in that, and moving into engineering management. So can you talk a little about that?
The first point is that engineering management is different than finance. It has a small component of finance, but if you want to make a career in finance, I would suggest you degrees that concentrate more in probably financial engineering or corporate finance, or anything of that sort.
Which is the courses that they can actually still take in the program, right?
Yeah, there's some sort of flexibility in the courses that you can take. But if you are completely sure that you want to make your career in the financial services industry, it's probably better to take a course or take a program which concentrates entirely on finance rather than being much more dispersed.
Right.
So if you're not sure, or if you want more courses in, let's say, data analytics, or more courses in the general management, which was my case, so I was more interested in taking a more generalistic approach rather than going very deep into finance. So that was the reason that I applied to the engineering management program. But yeah, I mean, if you're sure that finance is the way for you, it's better to apply to a program which is much more concentrated.
Makes sense.
So my experience, I was always interested in investing, and it really comes from my family. So I belong to a family which is very business intensive.
Right.
So all we talk about on the dinner table is probably what's happening in the country, what's happening in the financial markets, what's happening in microeconomic scenario of the city where I live.
Yeah.
So I was always interested into it, and my interest actually grew when I enrolled for the CFA Level 1 examination. So when you study more about it, when you get much more exposure to it, and after doing my Level 1 examination, I was 100% sure that that's the way forward for me.
Right. So do you think, Suryansh, that taking that CFA certification was helpful in finally getting a job or getting an admission into the school? Do you think it played a part?
For getting a job, definitely. For getting an admit into a university, not for me, but for people who want to go into a very concentrated finance program, definitely yes.
Got it.
And I mean, you touch a much broader point, which is about certifications.
Yes.
So if you have international certifications here, like before you come to the US, whether it be in IT or in cybersecurity or in analytics or let's say in finance, or you have project management, it always counts a lot, and it counts much more than your bachelor's degree.
Totally, I agree. I think a lot of students think that their experience or the research that they've done, would actually count towards their master's admissions, and that's not necessarily the case. That's, of course, you're going into very, very specific field, as you mentioned, right? But if you're just going into computer science and you've done certifications in computer science or cybersecurity and stuff, it would basically give you a foot in, but it does not actually it does not actually add value to your lower GRE scores.
Yeah. GRE scores are extremely important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, at least for the university admit, they are extremely important. Right? Yeah. Once you're in the program and then you start applying to schools, that is where all your research, well, not necessarily research, but your experience and the certifications are going to count. Right? Yeah. So that's something that, we hear from students a lot, that, I have a low GRE score, but I've done these certifications, and that's just not going to matter, even if the universities say that they look at applications holistically.
So what I think is that GRE score is not the only criteria for admission.
Yes.
But if your GRE score is not above a certain limit, above a par, probably it's very, very difficult for you to get an admit into a top university. Absolutely. So if you want to get a admit in the top 20 universities, I would say that 320, I mean, you would probably have a much better idea about it, but you should at least look into a GRE score which is in excess of 320.
Absolutely.
Because if you have a GRE score which is less than that, I'm not sure whether the people who give admissions would even look into the other credits.
Absolutely. And that's what it is. They will look holistically at your application, but only after you've crossed that threshold of the GRE, and not to mention the GPA as well. So if you have a low GPA, the problem is that most of the schools would not even look at your applications. So that's another problem, right? So those are the two big factors that universities look at when they're giving out admissions to students. And after that, whatever you've done in your research and your certifications and stuff, right? that then comes into play with on your statement of purpose. But yeah, no, this is great. Suryansh, we've got 1 more minute left. What would be your parting advice to aspiring students? What would you want to tell them, if you had to tell them one thing to focus on?
Spend a lot of time in taking a decision. Spend a lot of time in researching in what you want to do, and when you make a decision, stick to that.
Super. Well, thank you so much, Suryansh. This is very, very, very helpful, and we wish you all the luck. And
thank you so much, Raj, and I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thanks a lot, dude. Appreciate it.